Welcome, everyone, to the 30-minute Midas Touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh WrestlePlex. Now, here is pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas Touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. And with me, as always, is my co-host, the mogul, Mark Tipton.
The mogul. Very good. I would like to say that fits me. I don't know that I could say that with a straight face, but I do appreciate the moniker each and every week. The mogul. I do kind of like that one. This week on the 30-minute Midas Touch podcast, we're going to do something. I have heard people say it's best to never look back, or, don't live with regret, that kind of a thing, or second guess. It's best not to do that. But I am human, and there are true to the statement that hindsight is 20/20. That's something that I personally fall into a whole lot, and that's why for the subject of this podcast, we want to speak on missed opportunities in professional wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. So, missed opportunities are going to be a multitude of things. It's going to be, with maybe a particular superstar, or maybe with, a particular angle, or even a promotion, things like that. The thing is, we all make mistakes. You understand? Like you said, hindsight is 20/20. There's obviously been things over the years that I've missed an opportunity on to do as far as, booking wise and maybe decisions that I've made. But like I tell everybody, I'm right a hell of a lot more than I'm ever wrong. And that's kind of the kicker. I try to go at it with a grain of salt, though, is that every booker and every person that's making decisions, there is a thought process and a reasoning behind every decision they make. That's our hope, right? That at least there's some kind of thought process. Now, whether it's flawed or not, we'll get to. But yeah, today on the 30-minute Midas Touch, we're going to talk about some of these, these missed opportunities that probably could have obviously helped a particular wrestler out, or could have helped the promotion out, or could have helped the entire spectrum out.
All right. Well, if you don't have any particular example you wanted to get to, the one. And this may be just a result of my age and when I came along as a fan of professional wrestling. As I look back, professional wrestling, one of the things that sticks out to me and has long been a sore subject for me is the demise of WCW. I think that I thought that having the competition, and I don't think anybody would really debate this to a great degree, the competition between WCW and WWE, or WWF going back through history, and even when WCW was a part of the NWA, those two primary organizations, along with others, created a lot of competition, which made each company try to be better. It also created more opportunities for professional wrestlers to, have more places to practice their craft and become better. And to me, the demise of WCW was a tremendous negative impact on the and I suppose what I'll say, and this may people may kind of shrug at this, but I think that the NWO was in the end a missed opportunity. As popular as it became, I would say that it ultimately was, in my opinion, kind of the beginning of the end of WCW. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, actually, that's actually on my list too, as far as I actually have the NWO on here, because like you said, it was a missed opportunity in the fact that, yes, it was immensely popular, but there was no story arc. There was no end in sight. They had no way of getting out of it. You understand? So like when you're booking, especially when you're booking long term, things are very organic, and you kind of play it by ear. Like, okay, we need to do this here, we need to do that there. But you kind of always, off in the distance, kind of have an idea of this is where we need to be. Okay, so I don't know what the story arc for the NWO should have been. Obviously, they're trying to take over professional wrestling, blah blah blah. And the thing we never got was NWO versus the Horsemen, like a real, actual feud between the two. Because, well, one, it would be very lopsided because the NWO ended up having 60 members. So that's another thing too. If they would have kept it to 4 members, a very tight knit group, and then they could have went to war with the babyface 4 Horsemen. That would have been money. The flag waving, WCW 4 Horsemen. I think that would draw huge money. But at the time, I think Bischoff was, his thing was, let's get out of this old NWA stuff. So all the old NWA guys, the Flairs and the Arns and things like that, they were trying to push out or try to at least push to the side, and trying to do this new thing. And I understand that thought process too. But at the end of the day, it's about drawing and making money. And I think, like I said, huge missed opportunity just with that.
Right. Well, the way I viewed this is, as my view from a member of the audience. I'm a guy in the front row, kind of. It was a pseudo invasion by the WWF or WWE now.
Yeah.
Because you had former WWE talents kind of leading the way. Even when you added Hogan to the group, obviously his name was made in the WWE. And so it was almost like seeing the competition we had all felt between WCW and WWF at the national level, seeing that played out within a television program. And I thought that was very compelling and very interesting. And obviously the audience reacted to it. The NWO, there's no doubt, no denying, it was immensely popular.
Yeah.
But it felt to me like it lost its way.
Yeah. And that's what, Chris Jericho even talked about. It was always murder working with someone in the NWO because you knew you're never going to get any redemption back. They were just going to beat you or beat you down, and they would just be, on television, and you would never get any kind of glory out of it. So it's always from a creative standpoint, it kind of faltered, obviously. Another thing that the NWO did, or WCW did during this time was, they did a great job at building up the possibility of Hulk Hogan versus Sting. And we got the match, and in the match, there's some hoodoo that Hogan did with Nick Patrick. I think it was supposed to be a fast count, but he convinced Patrick to do a regular count. So he did the regular count, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh, Sting got beat." And then Bret Hart said, "Oh no, that was a fast count." I was like, "Well, not really," but it all just kind of fell flat, didn't it? So that combined with the fact that if Sting had beaten Hogan definitively, right? And then he went on this long run as champion. I think that could have been a huge opportunity for them to build their fan base and maybe even extend the 83 weeks like they talked about. But because of that, it kind of faltered, and then by February, Sting didn't have the title anymore from December to February. So,
well, and there let me just lay out, because the NWO and, well, let's say this, the NWO became the cool heel. It's something we've discussed before, but the NWO should have been the antagonist in this situation. They were the invaders. Hulk Hogan, as I can hear Bobby the Brain Heenan, screaming that Hulk Hogan has betrayed WCW, and that set it up really well for me. But then the representatives of WCW, you would think that the company WCW, in playing out their own storyline that they created, would in the end make WCW come out on top. And that's not what I saw. I never saw, you mentioned Sting. Sting would be an ideal representative for WCW or the Horsemen or someone else. But I never saw that happen. I never saw the good guy win at the end, so to speak.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think that was very ego-driven by Eric Bischoff's part, because he created the NWO, obviously based off the Japan stuff, but he had created it for WCW, and he felt it like that was his baby. Like I've heard him say before that he wanted NWO to be its own separate brand beyond WCW. So, of course, that wasn't going to happen. I don't think that was ever a possibility. It was just too, like you said, too counterculture, too niche, for something like that to fly. But yeah, like the NWO is just like it was a missed opportunity in the sense that they had lightning in a bottle because it was obviously immensely popular, but it's like once they got it, they didn't know where to go with it and what to do with it.
Well, there you mentioned the brand of the NWO. I will admit one of the things that frustrated me is, I was someone who was buying these pay-per-views at the time, and on the logo for each pay-per-view, they would have it listed as WCW/NWO presents whatever the pay-per-view happened to be. They put the NWO, a faction that was created within the company, they put it on a par with the company itself. Mm-hmm. And that frustrated me to no end. I was like, no. In effect, in my mind, they kind of diminished the prestige of their own brand in doing this.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, like Kevin Nash had said at the beginning, too, like, they wanted it to feel like they were invading, that they weren't supposed to be there, that they were crossing this line that no one had thought of before. And, like, even stuff like, I believe WCW wanted to sell T-shirts, and Nash was like, well, you can't do it at the gimmick table. Give us a van and park us out we'll sell them in the parking lot, because we're supposed to be
the counterculture.
The counterculture. We're supposed to be the outlaws of this, right? So let's,
the outsiders.
The outsiders, exactly. So let's make people really believe it. So yeah, they do that, but then, like you said, on the other side, we have WCW versus NWO, or WCW/NWO on all the promotional material. You know what I mean? So that takes away your suspension of disbelief.
Right, and in fact had one pay-per-view that was NWO pay-per-view. It was NWO sold out.
Sold out. Yeah.
It was an NWO pay-per-view
with NWO refs and completely heel night. I mean, it was different. It was unique, but at the same time, it's very hard to book.
Well, I guess what I want to get at is I think it was, and I want to see how you feel about this. To me, it was kind of they lost sight of long-term objectives in exchange for short-term ones. And this is where I guess we could direct some criticism more directly than we already have at Eric Bischoff. If I said, hey, I look at this situation, Eric Bischoff, not a WCW guy. When I first saw him, he was part of the AWA, and he was someone who was kind of brought in. So to me, maybe his commitment to the WCW brand as it was not what it really should have been for a leader.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't a wrestling guy. And that's what I've always said, too. Like, it needs to be a wrestling guy at the helm. Now, granted, you need someone there with an outside perspective, and that's what Bischoff thrived on, was the fact that he wasn't a wrestling guy. He was basically a car salesman, and he sold his way to the top of the company. He started out as an announcer, and then all of a sudden he's the president of WCW. I mean, how outrageous is that, right? So, yeah, and part of it was he's not a wrestling guy because he wasn't thinking wrestling. And some of those things became great ideas, like let's start using their real names. Let's start making it more realistic base. Something obviously that I'm a fan of. But then there was other stuff like I said, 60 people in the NWO. If any booker in their right mind would know that's way too many, right? Just decisions alone in WCW were always, nonsensical. Like, I heard they were writing the show as it was happening. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this next segment, get Booker T. He'll wrestle so-and-so in this next segment. And it's like 3 minutes away. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just complete madness to think about a live television show doing that.
Right. And for those of you who do not recall, the NWO in particular, it even broke into sub-factions. There was the black and white and the red and black / Wolfpack, and there was an LWO for a period of time. And it just really spun into this other... And
let's not forget the Blue World.
I had forgotten the Blue.
Yes. Out of ECW.
Yes, they did contribute to the situation. And ECW, in that instance, they might rightly been criticizing and mocking what was going on.
One more for the Blue guy.
Exactly. What I'd like to mention is, you mentioned the 83 weeks. And where I feel that WCW missed an opportunity is, I think that the company, or more particularly Eric Bischoff, became fascinated and fixated on the notion of beating Vince. They wanted to go live, go head to head with Raw, etc., and do all the things that they did. And it's like, to me, they lost sight of necessarily running a successful, well-run wrestling operation, and it was just whatever we could do this week to beat Vince. But then in the end, they lost.
Yeah, it was all short term. It was all very short term thinking. Like, it's shock value wrestling. Like, what can we do now to make sure we beat Vince? You know, and that's what, you know, Ric Flair talked about that too. You know, Bischoff would have these meetings with all the talent, and he would just spend the entire time talking about WWF. You know, like why they're beating them and why they can do this and, you know, that kind of thing. He's like, well, how about let's worry about our own product. Let's worry about our own stars. Let's worry about, you know, creating these new guys, you know, like WWE's doing. And that's how WWE ultimately won, was they created new stars. They created a whole roster of stars in the Attitude Era, even though, like we said, that was very short-term booking on WWF's part too. But at the same time, they were creating stars.
Right. And to me, the proof in the pudding for that was that to this day, he has a podcast which he calls 83 Weeks. I believe he bought a boat that he named his boat 83 Weeks, I believe. Or I heard something to that effect. But to me, I just thought, well, those 83 weeks were great, but you were trying to run an ongoing wrestling promotion. This is not about a short-term win in the ratings.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, Eric Bischoff, obviously, you know, like I said, not a wrestling guy, and I'm always a fan of wrestling guys being at the helm because, you know, there's certain pitfalls in professional wrestling that you don't know about unless you're that guy. You know, and anyone can have an idea, but it's making that idea successful and come to fruition is the best.
All right. If I can, I kind of want to turn on this same subject area. When WCW finally met its demise and came to the end, there was, you know, what Time Warner was going to do with it going forward. And Eric Bischoff, for all my criticisms of him, had allegedly put together a group to attempt to buy the logos and, you know, buy the rights to the names, and was going to, you know, kind of rebrand and start over again with WCW and try to kind of get it back going again. He had allegedly negotiated and worked out a deal before Time Warner sold to Vince. Do you think that not going through with the deal with Bischoff was a missed opportunity to have a successful alternative to WWE?
Yeah, because, and so Time Warner, no matter how popular WCW was in the past, they did not want professional wrestling to be a part of their brand going forward once they made the sale, once they bought Turner, right? So when Bischoff put all these guys together, you know, it was under the fact, hey, we're still going to have, you know, 2 hours every Monday night on TNT. We're going to take a couple months off, but we're going to come back. I think he said the first event back was going to be called the Big Bang, you know, and do that. But he had these guys ready to buy the company, but like you said, they came back and said, well, you know, we're not going to put you on television if you do. So that just, the whole deal fell apart. And once that happened, you know, that's when WWE swooped in, and from my understanding, bought it for next to nothing. I think it was like $3 million or something ridiculous. Like $3 million a drop in the bucket to a guy like Vince McMahon. You know what I mean? So, and he was able to buy his competition for
a song, so to speak.
A bottom barrel price. You know?
Right, because it was clear. And as I recall, this was at the point where Time Warner had merged with AOL at the time. And the management there, as you said, did not want to be, you know, a part of professional wrestling, and I'm sure Vince jumped at the chance when it was offered to him. If I need to be careful, did you have any particular one that you wanted to go to before I go to another direction?
Yeah, actually, the one that really got me thinking about this, and I use this as a teaching tool to my guys all the time, is Zack Ryder.
Okay.
Zack Ryder was, you know, he was kind of faltering on the roster. Then all of a sudden he created his own YouTube show, started doing his own thing on Twitter, you know, all that kind of stuff, and created his own brand. And it worked. He got over, you know what I mean? And it got to the point to where people were chanting his name when he wasn't even out there. And if you know anything about professional wrestling, you know that that's a very rare quality to have, and it shows how over someone can be. If you're just supposed to be on the show, it's not time for your match or anything. It's during someone else's match, and they're chanting your name. That's a big thing. But WWE chose to basically ignore the fact that Zack Ryder was this immensely popular person. Even so much to the fact that, there was one moment in particular where they could have made Zack Ryder the next star. And that was, a Madison Square Garden show, where everyone wanted to see him. He's obviously the Long Island IC, right? So right in that same thing. Vince always loved New York guys. Why not this? So they, the whole thing was, the whole crowd the entire night was chanting for Zack Ryder. And then, it would have been great for him to make like a huge save and show that he's the big baby face now. And they could have carried that momentum. They chose not to put him on the show at all. You know what I mean? And that, to me, like, as a professional wrestler, it hurts my feelings, because here's a guy that went out there, busted his ass, did his job, got over, and now here's his opportunity to cement his legacy. You know what I mean? And someone just does it just because. No, we don't want you to have that.
All right. On that, do you think it may have been because he kind of did it on his own? I have observed the WWE, it's kind of like their unwillingness to accept a good idea if it's not theirs.
Yeah, it's like their whole thought process is, like they say all the time, take whatever opportunity you're given and, make the best of it. Everyone's going to get opportunities, right? Well, we just saw this with Billie Kay. Billie Kay she's immensely, entertaining. She's not a great professional wrestler,
right? But
she's immensely entertaining. And every time they put her on television, she did a pretty good job of getting whatever they gave her, made it entertaining.
Right.
And what they do, they released her.
Well, the interesting thing to me is, as I watched that, it seemed clear to me that they thought Peyton Royce was going to be the breakout. Right. Like they had separated the two as a way to, and then that really didn't happen. And I saw Billie Kay and was far more entertained by Billie Kay in her segments. If I could turn back, I want to go to a little bit more historical thing, and I tend to think of these opportunities at the promotion level. So if you'll excuse me on this, the Super Clash idea, it was, to me, it was an idea that territories were trying to band together, as professional wrestling was becoming a nationalized product. That Super Clash was an opportunity of some of the remaining territory organizations to kind of get together and work together. Do you feel that the ultimate outcome of Super Clash was a missed opportunity for professional wrestling?
Yeah, we've covered this before with the, promoters can't work together episode, and that was a prime example. Like these promoters from all across the country tried to band together to run against Vince on a national level, and then they spent the entire time bickering and trying to steal each other's talent and that kind of thing, and it kind of all just fell apart, So if Super Clash would have had, I think, one boss, like say that it was Bill Watts' idea. Bill Watts is in charge. He's the president. Whatever decisions he makes, and then everyone else needs to follow suit. I think he could have done a lot better. But because there was, too many chiefs and not enough Indians, you've heard that saying before. I think it fell by the wayside because, and Vincent said it best. They can't work together. They can't even make a sandwich order, let alone run a wrestling company together. And he was absolutely right.
All right. Well, one of the things I would like to, before I carry on at any more of the things that came to my mind, is I would like to say, in your career personally, has there ever been any instances where you thought there was an opportunity for you to do something in your career that ended up not coming to pass for whatever reason, that was a missed opportunity for your career?
Yeah. There's one that that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to actually hear about, is that Moondog Spot actually wanted me to be a Moondog.
Oh.
So Moondog was doing a lot of work here in Dyersburg, and I was a young guy. I was only been wrestling maybe a year and a half, something like that. And I had a long goatee, kind of like, the Moondogs, and I had bleach blonde hair like they used to have, and He thought it'd be cool if I was, if I was a moondog, like a small moondog. Like, remember how Scooby had Scrappy? I was going to be the Scrappy dog of the Moondogs.
All right.
Right? But at the same time, they still want not as much the brawl style, but more like a half wrestling, half brawl kind of Moondog kind of thing. So I could do the work, on that thing. So I actually turned it down at the time because I was young and I wanted to be myself and that kind of thing. But looking back on it now, it really was a missed opportunity because I could have been the Moondog for a year, a year and a half, whatever it was. I mean, I definitely wouldn't have been in long term, but I mean, it would have been something to fun. I used to be a Moondog. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I was a Moondog. I ended up tagging with Bobby Eaton. I won tag titles with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. You know what I mean? It would just have been something to add to the legacy. But yeah, that's one of those things that it was a missed opportunity. I kind of wish I could go back and do that, but c'est la vie.
Well, certainly, I understand not wanting maybe not do it long term, but because it wasn't kind of your thing, so to speak. Because you were joining a group that was well established and you were kind of carrying it on. But hey, you've done pretty well for yourself anyway. If you don't mind me saying so. There's one that I have heard. I'm going to turn this to a specific decision that may have been a missed opportunity, and in the case of Stone Cold Steve Austin, I have heard him speak in the past about an instance and something he expresses regret for. He had been, a notion had been proposed to him that he face Brock Lesnar. I believe it was in a King of the Ring tournament, and he decided that rather than go through with this, that he literally went home and just did not appear for the WWE. Do you look at that as perhaps a missed opportunity for either Stone Cold, Brock, or the WWE in general?
I think it was a missed opportunity for the WWE in general, just because I think Austin was right. They said that's what the creative was and that's what they wanted to do. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm going home. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in, and I believe in that too. Like he said, Stone Cold Steve Austin, he'd built his name up. He was the top guy. You understand? So Brock Lesnar shouldn't be one of the first guys he beats. He should be one of the last guys he beats, right? And that angle, if they would ever had an angle between those guys, you're talking about 6 months to a year worth of business that could have popped the houses and made even more money. So to me, it was booking a match just for the sake of booking a match. It was like there was no forethought to it or anything like that. They were just going to throw it out there. Oh yeah, Stone Cold, and then have Lesnar beat Austin.
Yeah, as a part of a tournament.
As part of the tournament, and it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would you give that away? You want people to pay to see that. You know what I mean? And actually, I went to WrestleMania in Dallas, a couple years ago, and before the show, 6 months, whatever it was before the show, my buddy asked me, he's like, hey, what could they do to draw 100,000 people? And without hesitation, I said, Stone Cold versus Brock. You know what I mean? Because that match, even today, that turns everyone's head, right?
And do that in Texas.
And then, in Texas, and with what Brock's done over the last 5 or 10 years. You understand? Like, all that kind of stuff, could have played in huge for something like that. So, yeah, I think it was more of a missed opportunity for the company than anything else, because if they would have done it right, it could have been huge business for everybody.
All right. Well, your argument there, the thing that came to mind is there was a quote I heard attributed to the late Dusty Rhodes, in which he would occasionally ask individuals, and it was Paul Heyman that quoted this. He said, "Where is the money?" Right. And so what you're describing is a match between Brock and Stone Cold as a part of a King of the Ring tournament, kind of out of nowhere, as opposed to a match that's kind of a payoff to a long anticipated clash.
Yeah. Well, if you're just giving away in a tournament, I don't think they even were announcing it. You understand? It wasn't like they were for 3 weeks they were going, oh, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Brock Lesnar in the first round of the King of the Ring tournament. It wasn't anything like that. They were just going to do it for that night. And it's that makes absolutely no sense. And that's the difference between being a television writer and being a wrestling booker. You understand? And I think that's when WWE started to turn the corner on more television writing, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I'm sure our time is drawing now, but I did have one other particular one, unless you had something you wanted to get in. The one I had in mind would be in the case of Bill Goldberg. WCW, and I realize I'm kind of WCW heavy on this, and so I accept that criticism. They had created Goldberg and made him into a tremendously well-known and they had that streak, for all you want to say about it. They had built that streak. That streak was a significant thing. And much is made about that Bill Goldberg becoming the champion happened at the Georgia Dome in front of a large audience. The thing that struck me at the time is it was not a pay-per-view. It happened on an edition of Monday Night Raw at the Georgia Dome, yes, where he, after this long winning streak and beat Hulk Hogan to become the champion. Do you think it was a missed opportunity not to really have that be an even bigger money match than it was?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they could have made a killing with that, but for some reason they gave it away on free television, and they sold out the Georgia Dome, I think, in like 3 weeks. Like, they changed the venue and then sold out the Georgia Dome in 3 weeks for Goldberg versus Hogan. I mean, that's unreal, right? I remember J.J. Dillon telling me, though, that WCW never turned a profit on their pay-per-views. Like, WWE always made a profit on pay-per-views, but WCW never made a profit.
Really?
Yeah, so like I always found that really interesting. As hot as they were and how many buy rates they may have had, but because their overhead was so large and the contracts were eaten away. Because like a lot of the contracts too, if people don't understand, like when they talk about WCW, they weren't WCW contracts. Remember, some of them were AOL contracts.
Yes,
guaranteed money on that side for those. So that was off WCW's books. Like, so when they posted stuff like when they I think they made like $60 million, and then the next year they lost $80 million or some shit like that, right? Well, they lost that money and still didn't have all those all those salaries on their bottom line. So, but back to your original thing, yeah, the Goldberg Hogan match would have obviously been a huge thing for pay-per-view. I mean, I think we all would have bought it, but now we ended up getting one of the best Nitros in history because it was pretty impressive. I even forget the fact that Goldberg wrestled twice that night.
Yes.
He wrestled Scott Hall first,
yes,
and then he went back.
Kind of earned the right to get to the champion kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was a huge moment. Seeing 60,000 people stand up and hearing them when he speared Hogan, and then jackhammers him 1, 2, 3. I mean, it was huge. So I mean, it's a great moment. And I'm glad we got it, but at the same time, like you said, it was a missed opportunity money-wise.
Yeah, they may have left some money on the table.
Yeah, a couple million at least, right?
Absolutely. Are we at the...
We are. Yes, we are. We are at the time. We're never going to be right on 30 minutes. We're always going to be a little over, more than likely. I am your host, the Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and for my co-host, the mogul, Mark Tipton, thank you and goodbye.